Good morning, Captain. How you doing today?
I am super. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. Um, Thank you for agreeing to sit down with me. This is your first time actually sitting down with me, so I always tell my guests I don't like to ask. Tell me about yourself. As a seasoned journalist, I like to say now I'm past that. So what I always like to do is that I believe writing as a journalist, what people write tells us a lot about themselves.
Yeah.
And I like to start just by asking you to tell us about in your about section of your company. You state that TNTBS Media Inc. strives to be a socially aware company, empowering the community to see their ability to effect change. Now that's a lot to unpack. Tell me what that means.
The very fluffy way to say it is to live your passion and do what your purpose is. I want people to realize that the obstacles that we have in front of us that tell us we can't do something that we really want to do, whether it's be your own boss, start a side hustle, become a parent, get married, anything that you want to do that's your dream. There's always something real quick that'll tell us you can't do that because this. You can't get married because you're not even dating. You can't have a kid because you're not doing this, or you can't have a business because you don't have enough money. So showing people how they can do something, and there's always levels to it, like you mentioned in the beginning. I don't ask people, tell me about yourself. I lead this way now. So you're doing something different than when you started. So there's a layer that you added to your journalism when you have someone on your platform. So with what I like to do with my platform, I have a podcast as well, and we do a television show and a lot of stuff on social media now that you can be live anywhere, right?
Mhm.
We do a lot of that just to show people, one, the ease of use of something, or if they're afraid of talking, this is a way to practice it. Because a lot of stuff that we want to do, you need to already have experience for. But where do you get the experience, right?
Mhm.
So that's where I want people to be. And also, when you talked about what a person writes about, tells a lot about them. The causes that you're involved in tells a lot about you too. What are you concerned about socially in the community? And that's a way to get people to not only look at themselves, but look at others. Because while I want to live my dream, I need others to help me. So in order for me to live my dream, I got to help others some kind of way to get where they're going so that I can get where I'm going. So did I make that more complicated?
No, you got. I got
More
you.
wordy?
I understand. I always tell people if you didn't understand it, go to the website to learn more or give me a call. That's what it's about. I want to start off uh, TNTBS, which stands for This Needs to Be Said. Now, is it my understanding that your daughter came up with the name for the company? I suggest.
It was an accident. I can't even give credit to the right person 13 years later now, but
Okay.
it was really me scribbling on Facebook when we used to
Mhm.
have it was called Notes. So
Okay.
anybody who's new to Facebook, you don't even know that feature. But it was like an open diary. So you can go and write random thoughts and leave them in a notepad, and people can, check out your notes instead of you writing this long, post on your wall. But they got rid of that. So it was sort of like a blog. And I used to just write random stuff, things I saw, things that make you go,
Mhm.
so that was, it just kind of came from just randomness. And then other people had a business 13 years ago, and I was the only one who didn't have one. So I just grabbed the name I was already using.
Okay.
But I'm sure someone pointed me in that direction because podcasting was not going to be on my list. I was going to write books, and someone introduced me to Blog Talk Radio. And so that name had to be used, or I had to have a name. So somewhere in that suggestion, whoever it is, I'm sorry if I forgot. It's been so long ago. I may have, but between my children and other people that I was around, they was like, "Why don't you just, do that?" And I was like, "Obstacles? I can't do that. I don't have enough money, education." So just a random search for a business name is where that came from.
Okay. Um, so also I'm a real big I'm a marketing guy too at heart.
Mhm.
So real good. Real stickler for branding. Now, curious to know the logo shows a elephant. Now, is it Delta Sigma Theta, or is it the elephant in the room? Because this needs to be said. What?
Definitely the elephant in the room, but I'm always asked the question about deltas. So shout out to deltas. I'm not one, but I am one in
Okay.
heart. If I would have ever pledged, I would have pledged delta. But the elephant actually comes from my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, she just have little knickknacks or whatnots around the house, and most of them would be elephants with the trunk turned up.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, it's around me all the time. But what was the reason? My mom said because the trunk up means strength.
Okay.
And in order to say what needs to be said, you have to have the strength to deal with. You're probably going to oppose some people's lifelong beliefs,
Right.
and you have to be able to, stand in place, not waver. So it takes courage to do that and to understand that everyone won't accept this new idea if it's a new idea to them, or if they're ready to explore an idea that you present. Are you equipped to help them with that? So it takes strength, it takes courage. And so my mom, I give the credit to my mom for the elephant, with the trunk up specifically, for strength. But definitely shout out to the deltas.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now tell me a little bit about what your company actually offers, because you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot of great
Mhm.
stuff, and one of the reasons, just going through social media, we've seen you a couple of times, and I really like you're really having fun with it. You're using the tools of media, you're using the marketing lingo, but you're having fun with it, and really like what you're doing for authors. So can you tell me how that came about, and what are you doing with the authors? Okay.
In the beginning, it was really a foot in the door because I was
Okay.
you remember, Blog Talk Radio was fairly new. You've been doing this longer than me, so 13 years ago, getting someone to put your app on their phone, like that's a hard sell because
Right.
you got data usage charges and stuff we don't even know about right now because everybody can be unlimited. Um, but I started, just getting my foot in the door. I was doing some internship at a local radio station, and podcasting, like I said, it was still new. So me trying to sell advertisement on a podcast didn't work. So I used the AM FM station that I was on, as an intern to leverage getting interviews on my podcast. And
Mhm.
because I was given the assignment to reach out to the authors with the radio station, I built a relationship with them. And after I wasn't at the radio station, I was still booking these interviews. And the guy at the radio station didn't even want the interviews. He was like, "This isn't interesting to me. Do something with it." And
Mhm.
so I did.
Okay.
So many years later, I still have a relationship with a PR company, playback producers for any of the books that I interview for. Now, in between that, there are people that I know, that I can put my hands on that says, "Hey, I want to write a book. I need interviews for my book." And I've done everything from interview them on my show, get them booked on other people's shows, coach them on the business of being an author. And I've written a couple of books, and like I said, I wasn't ever planning to do a podcast. I was going to be an author. And so my love for writing came more from my life experience, being able to pick up a good book and enjoy it. And to see some books, poorly written, it was like, you didn't even edit this. So it came up over time, different things. But my one thing was getting my foot in the door so that my podcast could seem more realistic to someone who advertises with me, than it did before. I'm just coming up with topics to talk about, and maybe no one hears them. But now this author comes along and they're on a New York Times bestseller list, and I get to interview them. Well, that's notoriety for me. And
Mhm.
so over the years, I've layered it from just interviewing authors, getting authors booked on other podcasts, and teaching them about the business of being an author. But I talk about business in general. Like you say, you talk about marketing like that's your thing.
Mhm.
Marketing is part of what I do, a big part of what I do. But I love talking about the business of anything that we do. How
Right.
long do you want this business to last? When someone's writing a book, I say to them, spend 12 months with that one book. I don't care if you can write a book every month, that's more money in the bank for you. But when you spend time with your book, you can hear people tell you what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it, what they'd like to see more, and the fact that they're talking to you, they're interested in your work. So I got down to the business of the book. That's where I am now. Over all that time, I got to the business of the book, the business of being an author. You're not just an author, you are a business owner who's written a book. So that's where I am. I love to coach people and show them how close they really are to their reality.
Okay, now you're working with authors. So are you working with beginning authors that are just beginning? Or are you working with more established author? What's your ideal client base look like, or your ideal client?
Ideal client for coaching would be a beginner.
Okay.
Ideal client for helping me get notoriety is someone who's established on a New York Times bestsellers list. And those two work together because a new author trusts me because a seasoned author did trust me. And then the seasoned author helps me get in front of more seasoned authors. And then in exchange for my interviews, I get an awesome library because that's one of my dreams. I want to have a library of books, and I only take the interviews that I choose. So it's two different categories that's ideal for me. But the new author needs to understand that they're in business. So I really love them. But then that's also bittersweet because they have a way they want to do it, not understanding the industry, and they fumble and fall, and you have to be patient and wait. And that's frustrating. But ideally, I like to work with the new authors because we get to the raw content, what it was and what it becomes, and teaching them to understand the process. A seasoned author knows that they're coming to give something, so they bring a lot of content to my show. So like the other day, I had someone help me with financial first aid. The book that they wrote on financial first aid was from the perspective of this lady. She's privileged, but her privilege from her parents when she was growing up didn't spill over to her money knowledge. So that's almost the same thing as someone who grew up not having the money talk. And so she had to figure out how to not overspend, how not to be in debt, what is savings, and all the things that seemed like it would have automatically came to her because she came from a well-off family. Well, no, we meet in the middle. Somebody who's poor and somebody who was privileged, they're the same person when they don't have the knowledge. And so she came to teach on yesterday, and I appreciated that. And then there are times when I get an author who's writing a book just for a mental vacation. So it's a different variety of content that they bring when they're more seasoned. In the beginning, they're learning, so they don't have anything yet to share. So I have two sweet spots that I like.
Working with new authors or authors just starting out on their literary journey, what are some of the common mistakes you see authors make?
They don't read. They want to write, but they don't read. They haven't read anybody else's book. They only sat down and wrote theirs. That's the most common mistake.
Okay.
Being an author, but not being a reader doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. I appreciate that because in my line of work, and I think we spoke on this, the most common mistake I see authors, they're writers, but they stop writing after they write the book. They only write books. And so all the publications that need content, all the times that if they wrote a book about a specific industry, expert commentators, thousands of marketing opportunities, I see a lot of authors miss. This was one of the reasons we kind of started this segment, because we get a ton of press releases regarding new book releases. And so I just felt just seeing your work that it would be great to start it off with interviewing you. And I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. With that being said, I want to ask you about one of your books that just looks like a fun book. It's called "Help Me Settle This Argument." Tell me a little bit about that book.
Randomness again. It seems like the stuff I have the most fun with is the stuff that people are very attracted to. So, "Help Me Settle an Argument" can be something serious or silly. It can be from what goes on top, peanut butter and jelly, the peanut butter or the jelly on a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you would be amazed at how many people respond to my sillier questions than they do my more serious ones. But just to get different people's perspectives. And then it also limits them because they can't add anything. It's just whatever the argument is. Some people say, well, it depends. No, you have to answer, within the parameters. And so that's like a fixed boundary kind of argument. They may have said something different if something was a little different in the question, but you see that challenge in people's responses, but it causes engagement, and they look forward to having to share their opinion. And as long as I've been doing Help Me Sell an Argument on Facebook, maybe 3 people in 13 years have asked me my opinion of the question, but most
Mhm.
people come because they have something they feel like needs to be said or shared. Um, it actually started with a fish sandwich. A friend of mine was helping me with This Needs to Be Said early on, and she's a Bell's bondsman. So shout out to Dana Sidbury. And I was at her bail bonds office, and there was a sign in the corner that said hot fish. And I said, "Ooh, who's having a fish fry?" I said, "A good piece of white bread with
Mhm.
some hot fish. That's going to do it." So before I tell you what happened, you tell me, is it light bread or white bread when you're eating fish or whatever?
White bread.
White bread. Okay. Well, she said light bread. And that was
Okay.
our very first selling argument. Help me sell an argument. I said,
Mhm.
post it on your wall, and I'm gonna post it on my wall. Nobody knows whose side is whose, but the argument was, when you have a fish fry, hot fish, what kind of bread do you have? Light bread or white bread? And people would argue, "Oh, it's light bread because I'm from the South." I was like, "You're not from the South, it's white bread." But that argument started all of this. And I thought
Mhm.
it would be a fun game book or conversation starter to have with other people, because oftentimes I'm out socializing and I don't meet a stranger, but sometimes you don't really have something to say. But you ask somebody their opinion, they don't know you, but they're willing to give their opinion anyway. And so I tried it out on a couple of people I'm out to eat, and I'll say, "Hey, what's your opinion on this or this?" And they'll give it to you. And they're so happy to be a part of this conversation. I don't know why. I don't know what makes it work, but people just love having an opinion. So it
Right.
really took off for me there. So I thought I'd make this coffee table book, this game book that would be an icebreaker for when you have, company over, a game
Mhm.
book.
Right. That and it's I just love the aspect of that, the concept of that, because it's a thousand different marketing channels there, and to use that on social media, and it's a great example for authors because social media rewards engagement. And
Yeah.
so if you got a question, what goes first, the peanut butter or jelly, and you getting hundreds of questions, Facebook algorithm or the algorithm is going to reward your content. It's going to say, okay, Catherine's content is interesting, so let's move that up or higher. And I
Mhm.
just think it's a great idea. It's just a fun book. And like I said, it's
Well,
just
thank you.
authors need to get it. I like I said, I just love what you're doing. Tell me a little bit about the podcast industry network. So that's a group on Facebook,
Mhm.
not necessarily just authors, but tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I was gifted this group. Ramon started the group. Everything started 13 years ago. But
Mhm.
when I met him, we were all on Blog Talk Radio. So at the time, it was only for people who had their show on Blog Talk. And back then, there weren't a lot of options. Today, you have a lot more options. So
Right.
once the group became my group, I changed it from Blog Talk Radio to Podcast Industry Network. The other reason, too, is I read an article that said last year or the year before, maybe 2020, that the podcast industry is now $1 million industry, which isn't a lot of money. But what it said to me is that we are now viable. We now exist. People can stop saying, "Why would I advertise with you when I can go, elsewhere?" Because I'm viable now. We are an industry. We are labeled. We're in here. We're in the game. Um, and people are on different platforms now. They're not just on Blog Talk. A lot of people moved away from Blog Talk because there were other opportunities. Like Anchor allows you to put mainstream music in. I've used independent artists throughout my time career as a podcaster, and what two things I love is that the independent artists no longer have to give me their music and hope people hear it, because they're not getting counted for spins, because
Mhm.
it was expensive to get that, what was it, the ASCAP or BMI license
Right.
to play music. So I wasn't on enough for that to make sense for my business. So Anchor presents a way through their partnership with Spotify that if you're independent artists are on Spotify, They can get spins and you can get the content. But the other thing too is if you've been wanting to play mainstream music, you don't have to run the risk of being penalized if you get caught not being covered by BMI or ASCAP, not paying the artists for their work. So that's an option. But I've seen it evolve, and now we can use YouTube and Facebook and all of our social media to do a podcast. So that network is one for you and I to meet and to collaborate on topics. It's for us to network with each other and see if we can expand our personal networks. It's a great place for us to be caught up on the news of what's happening in the podcast industry, because what I was doing in the beginning was just doing shows and finding guests and finding music, but there wasn't really news about podcasting that would move us forward. We had to create that. So now that there is more news out about podcasting, it's a great place to share, great place to find not only your next guest, your next author, because a lot of us in that group aren't just podcasters. We're lots of things. So you can find a wealth of information without having to go out of our industry. And you have people who are as serious about what they're doing as you are, more than likely in that group. So my hope is that, we are a little over 300 people, and it's been that way for a while. But I'm looking for more people to, be a part of it, to bring us content for us to share with them. And we used to do training in that group, which was really what drew me into wanting to be an administrator in the group, is because while you may know a whole lot about marketing and getting your lighting right and have a home studio kind of thing, somebody else wants to do that and you have the knowledge to share. Clark Garrison, rest in peace. He started a network in Atlanta, Georgia, and he had different networks. He had a secular network, a gospel network, just talk radio. And he expanded my mind that within my network, it's a network of shows, not just, stuff in line with my thoughts. So that group, that podcast industry group, is to, one, help us get training, help us be networked with other people who understand the industry, to learn and to grow.
Awesome. I appreciate everything you're doing. When your podcast, this needs to be said, you're talking with a lot of authors. What are some of your favorite questions you like to ask authors about their books?
The surprise, like today I had an author that I interviewed, and it's a novel, so I call it a mental vacation. And I always hear them say that their characters surprise them, and that surprises me, because you're writing the book. How could this character that you're creating surprise you? And unless you've written a book, you really don't understand it. So I always like to ask that question, because I have not yet written a book where my characters will take me somewhere I didn't intend to go, because I've only written a business book and a game book. So that's one of my favorite questions. And I also like to ask them what surprised them most about their work, or what stood out to them. Of course, asking them, why did they even write this? Like the lady with the financial first aid. She said, because I came from privilege and I still didn't understand money, basically. And I'm thinking, wow, because I'm coming from not privilege and not understanding money, and we're meeting in the middle. So why did you write this book, and what was the most surprising thing that you learned from writing the book? Those are my favorite questions to ask.
Okay. In your experience with interviewing authors, are most of your authors, are they full-time authors, or this is just they're working on their project, they're working on their projects and then trying to make it their full-time business? Tell me a little bit. I'm trying to figure out the viability of, a lot of people want to leave their standard 9 to 5 and work on social media, YouTube, start a podcast. What what are a lot of the goals of the authors that you're talking to?
Well, I'm gonna say it's a 50-50 split between not well-known authors and well-known authors. The well-known authors, most of them are full-time authors, but some of them still are writing a book as a side hustle. There was a guy I interviewed who's been on Jeopardy a bunch of times, and he wrote a pub trivia book. With his full-time job, he's a bartender. So that book complements what he does with his regular job. For a new author, a lot of times I'm getting someone who has had a project just sitting and they want to do something with it.
Right.
They didn't know the first steps to take, so they're working a full job. This isn't, and in fact, they don't really have a full-time vision of being an author at this point. They just want to get the project in print and be published.
Right.
So they hadn't realized to have a goal for the book. They just want to publish it. So in that space, I'm teaching them, hey, not only can we publish your book, but you could probably use this book as a textbook, in a course that you can create. Or so I'm spending time showing them the possibilities, like you were talking about, as far as marketing. I'm showing them, like course creation, product creation that they can make as a result of their book. So it's different, but most of the time, people still have a regular job.
Okay. Well, Catherine, thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today. If an author or somebody that's into podcasts and want to learn wanted to reach out to you, how would they do that?
I would love it if they would stop by the website, www.tntbsmedia.com, and that will attach you to all of our social media. You will be able to find me on Facebook and the group that we were talking about, Podcast Industry Network. And it's still new to me because it was Blog Talk. I keep wanting to say Blog Talk. But if you go to my website, tntbsmedia.com, you'll be able to connect with me, and lots of free content. And it's not free because I think people are freeloaders. I think it needs to be free, one, because I need to give back. But two, when you're getting started, spending money on everything you think you need is not a wise business move. So I'm here to help. And once you are able to invest financially, and you can understand that, there's levels to that. But meet me at my website, get free content, get free advice, good advice, and get some good connections.
Okay. Well, Catherine, thank you again. And I'm definitely going to have you back. Like you were saying, we got to figure out how to turn this into
Yes.
a reoccurring role.
Yes.
But you shared a lot with me, and I definitely am going to sit and try to settle an argument with me. That in
Yes.
itself, that's marketing gold.
Yes.
So I appreciate you for sharing that with me. But
Thank
once
you.
again, I like to say thanks and have a great day.
Fantastic. You too. Thank you for having me.